we can't let ourselves be divided by our differences. Because our differences are what makes us special. There's so many stories to be shared. I focus on being just decent at everything. That way it looks like I'm good at everything. But really, I just like say like decent at everything. Everyone's like, wow, he's decent at that and that and that. He must be really good.
How's it going, creatives? Welcome back to Leon Unity, the creative filmmaking and storytelling community by Leon Films. So today's thing is going to be a little bit different. With everything going on in the world, I wanted to reach out to a friend of mine. He is the devilishly handsome comedic talent, and he, like me, is a writer, filmmaker, both behind and sometimes in front of the camera too. Ladies and gentlemen, Darnell Murphy.
I'm gonna clap for myself so it doesn't feel awkward. Thank you. It's good to be here. How have you been, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I've been good. It's right at the start of the whole coronavirus outbreak, I started doing a lot more videos for YouTube, and I'd literally pre-recorded them just before this all began, and we did a film of ours that we filmed called Bump, and I did a whole bunch of like tips from on set, and then coronavirus hit, and while I've tried to keep up consistent, it's felt a little bit like I'm just throwing stuff out there that's not really relevant to what's going on in the world today. I thought to myself, how can I try and make a difference, and how can I let stories be heard that aren't just my own? And I reached out to you and a few other creatives who are from the Black community to try and show off their creative talents and just see if we can cook something up, what we can do. And you were the first person I actually reached out to because we used to do an acting workshop together, and which slowly devolved into a Smash Brothers tournament, but that's neither here nor there. You're always one of the best at both.
I focus on being just decent at everything. That way it looks like I'm good at everything. But really, I just like say like decent at everything. Everyone's like, wow, he's decent at that and that and that. He must be really good.
Well, you were the co-creator of Anime Crimes Division, so like that blew up quite a bit on the RocketJump channel and on Crunchyroll as well. And it got a second season, which isn't as common in the web series world as some might think. Because maybe I thought before I had issues with my own second season.
I mean, even that's so. It's so interesting, even that. I mean, I love it. Don't get me wrong, but definitely, I could look at it as something I created and be like, "Oh, this is weird," but like, I like it, obviously. And it was weird seeing the people who also liked it, and I was like, "Oh, what? Oh, nice!" And then, again, the second season was definitely huge because we had like just 3 episodes for like the first, and it's kind of like all right, do what you want, and then we did it, and we're like, cool, and they're like, all right, do that again, and we're like, oh, what? Oh. Okay, yeah, we can do that. And then we tried to like give it like a coherent, like continuous season long story, and like, yeah, that was a lot of fun to do. And definitely, with Hollywood being locked up in the whole Corona thing, like, it remains to be seen if there'll be a third season. But just even having the first one and then having a second one on top of that is like huge.
Yeah, and it was great, and it's kind of funny because it comes from a culture that is very much. That's been very much developed on YouTube through almost like a meme style thing, which is kind of interesting, and it's kind of made its way back to YouTube in this high quality, high level production that I thought was honestly one of the funniest things I'd seen in a long time. I thought,
really?
Yeah, I thought all the performances in it were great. I thought the deadpan humor in it was just brilliant, and the way it felt like a good departure from a lot of the other stuff I've seen on YouTube, which tends to try and go for something that's a little bit more lo-fi, really. And granted, this was obviously done in collaboration with Freddie, who had done Video Game High School, which we both had background roles in.
Yeah, right. I definitely say like that was. I think the reason why it came out so great, and it's not even like because of anything like I've done. Honestly, I think it's because like it was like. Everyone working on it, from like me and Freddie to Anthony Birch who wrote it to like the wardrobe to the actors, everyone had something, and like they all, it's like it's called Anime Crimes Division. We all liked anime. We all liked something. We've seen it at one point or another and enjoyed it. And so to have fun with it as fans of it, I think it really helped to drive it along. Like even watching, there's some things I know for sure I didn't put in there, but like, season 2, for example, there's like, the episode where like, it's like the romance episode or whatever, the beach episode. And like each time like a scene was switched from like, our regular show to like a dramatized, anime trope. even like something on her outfit would change. Not her outfit, like her little like tag she was wearing would change to reflect the Switch. And I was like, I for sure didn't put that in there. That's like so good. And that was like a wardrobe designer who was like, just being a fan of this, of the genre, was like, that would be good to have in there. So I think every person involved, every step of the way, added a little bit of themselves in there. And so it was really a thing where it's like, there's not a me. That was just like a team effort that just made that like you can only get so lucky. And just being fans of it and having like a team that was all working toward the same goal made it like the beauty that it is. And so like, I'm super proud to even be a part of that.
Yeah, I completely get that. And I remember my first experience actually producing something myself had a very similar feeling to it. Was that it would never be what you saw in your head, what you wrote on the page. You know, it's always going to be something that is so much bigger than that, because it's everybody is telling their own story, and that's kind of like what I'm trying to do on this channel right now, is basically that everybody tells a story, whether you're writing on a page, shooting it down a lens, crafting the costumes, as you said, or as an actor yourself in the past. You know, you tell a story through the way you act, through the decisions you make as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like the editor as well, who basically brings all that together and tells the final and makes the final story cohesive and makes sense. You know, and the few times that editors haven't lost their mind by the end of the production.
Oh my gosh, yeah, editing is a whole skill in and of itself. Like, for me, that's always the most interesting part to watch, where I'm like, here's all the random clips. We have 3 takes we really like, and these like we're kind of, and like they're like, okay, I'll figure out all these different and various timelines and stitch them into one solid one. And like you said, I mean, because we did like My Life is a Video Game. Like, how was that? Because I know like from conception to like finished product, I know if, like, were there parts in there you felt like got lost in that translation?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like, ironically, people really loved, and I think it was the best performance that I did, especially, and I think that everyone did, was the sort of Double Dragon episodes. That was completely different from the way I originally envisioned it. I originally envisioned something a lot more cartoony, literally, and a lot more 8-bit, and that's part of the reason I've been considering going back and actually remastering it and redoing some of the effects now that I've got like a much more depth to my own editing skills since then. There's definitely things in there that never were conceptualized the way I initially planned for them to, and then there's definitely things in there that like came out so much better than I ever expected it would. Some of the stuff that never even got released, like some of the spaceship episodes that never got released, looked so much better than I ever expected them they would, at least the interior sets. And then there's the first-person shooter stuff looked so much better than I ever expected it would. Even though I'm always, believe it or not, in favor of actual film school, I always tell people that film school is literally just the very beginning. You will learn 100 times more on your first production, but film school is good for getting your feet wet in a safe environment, if you can afford it, of course.
Yeah. I mean, that's the problem, is that even like that's got like a kind of pay or price wall to get past that. So, I mean, but definitely I think like anything, like doing helps you get better. And so like, you got to take the plunge. And I think, you know, as a writer, like there's so many times, like, you know, you have the idea, you want to do it. Like you said, you want to do something more cartoony, but when you start shooting, you run into complications you don't think about when you're writing, because you shouldn't be thinking about it while you're writing. While you're writing, you should be trying to put the story on the page. And then as you start making those pages into like frames, then you figure out like, okay, what can we do given our budget, our time, our space, and what really fits for the story I'm trying to tell, you know?
Yeah.
I think writers are their idealists, and then filmmakers or at least like producers and that kind of thing have to be more realistic. Like, okay, I would love to have a spaceship come down and like shoot that all on location with the actual things, but that's expensive. So what if we, you know, it's a compromise.
Well, I think we've both been to Laurel Canyon stages in LA, right? Where they have the spaceship set.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where we shot some of My Life as a Video Game up there, and it was, I mean, that first time seeing that was like, whoa, that's telling. Like, I feel like sometimes you get to a location, it's suddenly everything in your mind changes to like fit the narrative that you've now found, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah, I mean, tell me a bit about your own experiences. Like, let's with like say Anime Crime Division, like when you were going from the concept, like the inception, is obviously to actually once you were on set. Tell me a bit about your experiences on it.
Honestly, and that's another thing. I feel like for the most part, It was a pretty solid translation. There are probably some things that so when Anthony wrote it and I'd read the script, I'm like, oh, that's great. I don't know how we're going to do this or how we're going to pull this off. But I think we've honestly been able to do a really good job at translating a lot of that stuff. And there was a lot of things I had in there that were less interesting than it played out. Like just reading it, when I'm putting it in my mind, I'm like, okay, that would probably be good. I don't know if this joke is going to land. I think if they say it right, maybe this will be funny. And then you see it, for example, the Diglett card, right? To me, that was in episode 2 of the first season, where they're auctioning some rare Super Saiyan Dark Magician, right? And then they reveal it and it's a Diglett because it got stolen and replaced. And to me, I'm like, oh, that's so fucking funny because the Diglett is the weirdest, most dumbest looking thing ever, and its name is so stupid. That's funny to me because it's stupid. Is that something that will be funny to someone else because it's also stupid? I don't know if my same stupid's their same funny. And so we had that scene there, and we had cosplayers come out that really brought it to life. People come out and cosplay and all that kind of stuff. And to see that whole auction scene take place, I was like, oh man, this is funnier than I thought it would be. Oh, this is actually funny, I think, objectively. And it's something I would remember leaving the show with. And so just watching that, and then the costumes come in, the people were wearing in the background. How do you make LA feel like an anime centric mega Tokyo center? And we had people, and then once the actors and extras came down, I was like, oh, that's how you bring the people in, and the people built this environment. And so I was definitely impressed and proud of the people we were able to put together on the project. And that for me was fascinating to see. To be okay, that's how it translates. Sometimes it's better. Most times I fear that it's the worst, but in that case it turned out to be better because of what everyone brought to it.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's a huge part of filmmaking, though, isn't it? Really, is that you never really quite know how things are going to turn out until everybody's kind of having had their input on it, and it goes down the lens of a camera basically. All that light hits the sensor, and you've suddenly got this image that looks completely different to what you saw in your head, but also has so much more that you never even imagined. And there are things that work that you never thought would work. I totally get when you were saying about how you would see a joke and you'd be like, I don't know if this is really going to work in camera, and then suddenly it absolutely works. And there's just little things like that where things that you aren't expecting to be so great, and you're kind of a little bit cautious about them, turn out to be absolute scene stealers.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt that when I was making my own shows, and clearly you did as well.
And it happens. I mean, it definitely comes through collaboration at the end of the day, but also just confidence, in the script. And then the director's ability to really translate, it's ideal into a reality. And so when you get to see the final product and you're proud of it, it's so satisfying. It's satisfying. There we go. What did I say? Satisfying? Words, they're hard.
So you work as a teacher, right?
I teach in LA. I teach in a private school, a couple private schools actually. And I'm a technology teacher. So I'm teaching kids about all the cool things they can do with a computer. I teach all the grades from pre-K to 8th. So at the younger end, it's oh, here's how you click. Here's how you move a mouse around. This is the keyboard. And it's middle, it's maybe 3rd, 4th grade. Then I have them by that point, they're using all the Google applications. They're using Slides, Sheets, Word, Google Classroom, and then we have them doing projects, working on their typing, creating websites, making games, and then we jump over to middle school, and by that point they're coding. Well, they've already started coding, but at this point they're refining their coding skills. They're doing more intensive computer things. We used Blender in the past. We've done 3D modeling. So it's definitely interesting to see how much they're learning, because when I did it, it was just typing. It was the little simple type games where it's save the plants by typing in the water buckets, and you type it in. You're oh, this is so cool. And I'm you guys are actually using a program that professionals are using. You're using Maya, you're using Blender. These aren't just meh. These are in industry standards that you're learning in 8th or 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. It's a whole world. And it's I'm curious to see how many leaps and bounds will be made by the time they get into the workforce. So it's interesting to see, but it's definitely a lot of fun to be there, kind of part of that, to see the growth. And it also helps me learn, because the best way to learn is through teaching.
Absolutely, yeah. That's definitely something I found doing doing tutorials and things like that has always been. It doesn't even compare to what you do in terms of teaching, but it's the little bits that you can teach to anybody. So you learn things along the way yourself. And as I think somebody once, I think it was from that movie Catch Me If You Can, with DiCaprio's character said the only way was like, how did I teach a subject I knew nothing about was by reading one page ahead of the one chapter ahead of the class.
Yep, and I'm like, it worked. And you're like, that's something. I'm like, that's so wild. It's so wild. That is, I do love that movie too.
Yeah, it's a great film. I want to let's talk a little bit about your experiences in the industry. And things are quite heated right now, both as a person of color and in an industry that is right now completely shut down. So what can you tell me about like your experiences in the industry over the last like few years that you've been here?
Oh man, so it's definitely interesting. I typically have found that like I am one of the rare native Los Angelinos. Most people that come into the film industry are from outside of California usually, or outside of LA.
Hey,
but
right here.
Usually, yeah.
I
usually
came from way outside of LA.
Yeah, you came from across the pond. So like everyone's like usually not from here. So to be like from Los Angeles, like, this is my city and I'm working in it, is like rare enough. Then I'm also Black. And so usually I find that like there's not many of us. It's not a predominantly led Black industry. If I were to go into sports, yes, there's predominantly Black, but like it comes to filmmaking, it's really not. And so I came in, of course, the bottom level, came in as an intern, and then like kind of just rose through the ranks from there, just from like, just staying around. And honestly, like you said, like reading one chapter ahead. Like I hired at RocketJump, I got hired to do special effects. I didn't know special effects. I didn't let them know that I didn't know special effects. I just went home, I just crammed that weekend, and I just somehow was able to just like learn enough and bullshit enough to just have presentable projects that like got ahead. And by the time I was on my internship, I was like, like you want to come back? You want to do that again? You want to try something different? I'm like, let's do something different. Because it's like, it worked the first time. I don't know if I could keep doing that same cycle of like running one page ahead. But it's definitely interesting just being like one of the few Black people in the industry, because when you see someone else like of your same color, you instantly connect. So it's an easy way to get friendships, because you're like, hey, oh my God, like, how have you been handling it? How have you been getting through this? But also it's very interesting to see the way we're portrayed in media, even though we're not a big part of it. It's like not being invited to like, it's like not being invited to the table, but having people talk about you at the table. And you're like, well, hold on, I want to be there for that conversation. And so, and then of course, this is like, that was before like we really started addressing like, the Oscars, so white movements, and really start arguing for like, representation in film and media, because at the time it's like, objectively, I keep like, well, there's so many, like, objectively, not even being Black or not knowing anything about it, I could be like, there's Black people in media. Like, there's, I don't know why Ice Cube was the first person I came to. Probably because I saw a tweet of his earlier, but like, you have famous Black actors, you have Morgan Freeman, you have Will Smith, you have Idris Elba, you have so many famous Black actors. You're like, what's nonsense? Hollywood can't be racist. And you look behind the cameras and you're like, oh, there's rarely people behind the camera, especially like at a writing level, at a directing level, at like all the levels. Like you saw Black directors, you'd be like Spike Lee. Now you can say Spike Lee, Ryan Coogler. And you have Ava DuVernay. I think that's how you say her last name. But even then, like I can name 1,000 more. If you name great film directors, you'd be like Tarantino, Spielberg, Lucas. You can go through all those directors. So I thought that was very interesting to see that like there really is a lack of Black people and people of color behind the cameras and in front of the cameras when you look at the industry as a whole. And so being able to get where I'm at and be in a position where I can help make something from nothing was phenomenal. To be like, oh, hey, I am not only here, but I'm actually part of the process. I'm not just like the black person on set. No, this is something I helped create. And we want to get to the point where it's not abnormal. In an ideal world, I wouldn't even have to think about that. It'd be the normal where it's like, it's inclusive. Like everyone of all colors and nationalities and backgrounds and genders and sexes come together and just make a fun project because they care. That's what it should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think right now, there's been a big movement. So it's really the movement is screaming for more of that. And I think people are taking it as you just want it to be all Black and all that. I'm like, oh God, no. I want some variety, because there's interesting stories that I don't know of that, happened to the Asian community, that happened to the Indian community, that happened to the white community. There's so many stories to be shared. And I definitely think bottlenose it so anyone, it doesn't help the whole.
I've been personally cooking up a video for a while now because it took me a long time personally to understand the concept of representation and why it matters. Because at the end of the day, most media caters towards me. I'm a white guy, white straight male with an English accent. So or English speaking rather. So a lot of stuff really caters towards me, and I never quite understood the concept of representation until a couple of years ago, really. And it all suddenly started to click in my brain. I always thought in my head it should always be just like whatever suits the part, right? Whatever's best for the story. But that's not always true, because until we reach a point where it's not about, where we recognize that there isn't just a default, basically, because other people will keep defaulting back to essentially me, because that's what like Hollywood and the media has fed us for so many years, is that white straight males are the default. But It's just not true. It's just not true. It's not true even on an average scale on the planet. This is going to go into a bit of a personal story, but when I was growing up, I was the Greek kid at school. So definitely there was certain things that were taking the piss out of me. So even at like that 1 or 5%, it definitely influenced my character. But I never once felt fear for my life. I was never taught, precisely what to do when speaking to a police officer or anything like that.
Yeah.
But having like your friends call you like a greasy kebab shop owner and like make fun of Greek accents and your name and things like that is always like Petros Iwawawo. I mean, I don't exactly have the name that is the easiest to pronounce in the English language, but it suddenly when I moved to the States, I had a similar feeling. It was that I was the English guy. So again, I was being slightly singled out occasionally here and there by everyday people. And then when I would go to Greece, I would also be the English guy. I wouldn't be a Greek person. So I would never really know exactly how and where I fit and where I belonged. But because I'm a white guy, because I'm a straight cis white guy at the end of the day, I always had that to kind of fall back on. And it wasn't until, ironically, I watched Wonder Woman, which is kind of like the de facto movie that people have like been looking to as great representation for female superheroes in media in the last few years. But to me, it was because she was Greek, and suddenly I felt represented, and suddenly it just like clicked in my brain. Oh, and this 1% of what I've been feeling for so many years is what everybody else has been feeling. And it really made me question exactly what I'd been feeling over the last like 30 odd years of my life, and how everybody else must be feeling, and how it made me question my privilege, as it were. Which it's definitely a real thing. Please, nobody question that at home. It's definitely a real thing. But I always hated the term white privilege as it is, because white privilege is where things should be for everybody. Yeah. Not just like, and as you were saying, it shouldn't, when you go on set, it should be everybody from all kinds of ethnicities and backgrounds who are hired based on their talent and skill, not because white cis men are the default, basically. Yeah. And it's definitely one of the things where, and I try to keep an open mind, because as much as like, it's very real to me, and I experienced a lot of the systematic oppression and racism, like, especially here in America. I try to keep an open mind about it, as and that's the hard part, as like, as a person of color, it should be like open-minded about it. Like, well, understand their view. And it's like, what the hell? Like, they don't have to worry about the things I have to worry about. And there's that initial anger. And as I think Dave Chappelle said it, as you know, first reactions are often misleading or not complete. I make a terrible first impression. Oh, we're still talking. You obviously made a good first impression on me. That's because I was letting you win at Smash Brothers this whole time. I mean, definitely that's why, and that's why I haven't played you since. Yeah. And for those, I think everyone watching knows that Smash King. Actually, no, not true. My roommate's a Smash King. But anyway, point being is that I try to understand, like, what it would be to be a cis American, a cis white male American, or a cis white male anywhere, and be like, okay, how does
the Black experience looked to me from the outside. From the outside, I get what it must be like to have all these imaginary ghosts running around where it's like, dude, like all cops really want to kill you. Why would they do that? If they want to kill you, why would they take a job to protect and serve? And you're like, I can understand that notion. White privilege. What do you mean? I'm working the same job as you, or you're in the same place as I am. How could it be white privilege if you're here? Or if like, you know, if there's white privilege, why am I not a millionaire? And I get the basis understanding of not knowing because you're not confronted with it. But then you have to also put yourselves in outside of both of our shoes and look at the system. What was it built on? And at least for America, it was built on stolen land. And then, you know, who was it built by? The slaves, Black slaves. You had you had slaves, mostly Black. You had Asian workers that worked building the railroads. And so you have a group of people of color who've been mistreated and not treated as equals since the foundation of America. That's what it was literally built upon. And you come to years later and like, you know, we've got our civil rights movement is not even 100 years old yet. That's not 100 years old. You know, like you look at it and you read about it in books, it's not that. A lot of our history has been lost, especially in America. We don't teach about all the misgivings and unfortunate incidents that happen to, you know, people of color, not just Black. And so, the women didn't get a right to vote until like the 1920s. I think we're almost at 100 years of women being able to vote in America. So there's so much that we've had to do in the last couple of years. And it's easy to turn a blind eye because you don't want to believe it or it sounds too far-fetched. But the truth is that it's real and it affects people every day. You just have to like, you know, be willing to listen and look outside your shoes and really look at the picture as a whole. Because, you know, we say Black Lives Matter, people will say all lives matter. And it's like, of course, all lives matter, you know, but if we're going to say all lives matter, how can that be true if Black lives don't matter? If you say all lives matter, you have to say Black lives matter. I have to say white lives matter to make that true. And we're not saying that white lives don't matter. And blue lives matter is not a thing. You're
being really disrespectful to aliens right now.
You know, they haven't made themselves known.
It's true, actually, as far as we know.
Yeah, if they come in and start blowing stuff up, you know, I might not be like, hey, alien lives matter. I'm very cautious of that.
True.
But, you know, it's things where like all lives matter. You know, no one's not saying that right now. We're saying, hey, our lives matter. We want to be heard. I think that's a big movement. And like, I think it's been a movement that's been festering up inside America since the civil rights and before that, where, you know, we like Oscars are so white and we were like, no, like Black people were very much like the Black community was very much against the way the film industry was operating, which is hard because I work in it, but I understand because you have all the movies that star or that would get nominated had Black people in a position of servitude. It's like, you know, the actress whose name I'm going to butcher and I cannot remember. I'm gonna say it's like NY. It's like I forgot what it was, but she was nominated for. I think she won for Best Actress for her role in 12 Years a Slave. But her role was that of a slave. When Octavia Spencer got put for a role, I believe it was like The Help or something like that. It's always like a movie related to or about racism and about how at some point a white person came in and was like, hey, I got you, buddy. And we're like, oh my God, thank you. And we got through it. And it's like, and you hear about that white savior complex. And it's just like a tapestry of issues. But ultimately, at the end of the day, people are just screaming to be heard and be treated like equals because it's really, like there's colors and that's something we've created where it's like, oh, hey, you're Greek, I'm Black. It's like, in the day, it's like, what are, like, if we are down to our bones, because let's remove this flesh, remove the muscle, are down to our bones, we're just humans. We're Homo sapien at the end of the day. And like, that's what matters is that, hey, you know, we are different from whales in the ocean. Like, if whales attacked us, it's like, yo, Homo sapien squad, let's stick together. But like, that gets lost. And I think we live in an age where we're more connected than ever, but we're also being divided.
Absolutely, and, yeah.
You know, America, we want to shout united we stand all day long, but it's like, the message is true. United we stand, not just Americans, united we stand as a human populace. Like, we need to come together. House divided cannot stand on its own. We need to come together, and we can't let ourselves be divided by our differences. Because our differences are what makes us special. Like, I love that you can tell me the like interesting tidbits about the Greek culture and about what it's like living in the UK. I don't know about that. And knowing that and hearing those stories, it's inspirational. Like Wonder Woman, like you watch Wonder Woman and you got something out of it. It's like I watched Wonder Woman. I couldn't share in the same feeling of accomplishment, but I could feel the same happiness for women and for people who watched it and felt like they were heard. I'm like, that's great. Because more of that. When Black Panther came out, it's like it's a Marvel movie. I don't know, like it's not like it's a Marvel movie, but like it's nice to be like, oh, we're not a sidekick to a white main character. I'm not Falcon. I'm not War Machine. It's like, no, this movie isn't about us. Like we are our own heroes. I'm like, oh, what?
In fact, it had a white sidekick in it.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, what? Okay, like it's interesting to see, and like people just want to be heard, and people want to feel like they matter. You know.
What do you think people who are still slightly aren't as accepting of maybe their privilege, or aren't quite, who are white straight men or straight women, basically, who, or even people in the LGBTQ community who haven't quite understood the concept behind Black Lives Matter, or haven't really understood why it's so important and why these things happen in the industry, why Oscars so white was a thing, and haven't fully quite grasped what the nature of it is really, and what they can do to improve things.
I would say
how can they learn without essentially asking people of color, can you teach me, please?
I would say, honestly, just ask to hear their stories. And if the more people you ask, the more you find the similarity between the stories. And I think that to me is like the biggest thing is you have to, one, be willing to listen, and then two, ask. Like, you know, there's this instant, like, I don't want to have to teach you about racism, but it is on us as victims of it to make our trials and tribulations known. But also you have to be willing to seek it out and show that you're willing to listen. Because everybody wants to cry. Because of course they want to tell their story. They want to share. It's therapeutic to voice the problems that have been plaguing you. And so to be able to say that to someone who's willing to listen, to like, hey, like I don't understand it. Can you help me understand? Like, what are your experiences with it? And again, the more you ask, the more you find they're the same. Black people in America have experienced some of the same injustices that Black people in the UK, Black people in New Zealand, Black people over in Asia. It's like there's all sorts of common denominators here. And then once you see that, it's like, oh, it's not like an American ploy. It's not a British ploy. It's like, no, like this is a worldwide problem. And it's hard to get past that because it's a tough truth to hear. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it comes from some place of just like, you know, empathy, for your fellow man, for your fellow brother. Talk to your friends first, because if they're your friend, first off, like, you trust them. Hopefully you love them enough to listen, and then they'll share their hurt with you, and you can hurt with them, and you guys can heal together. Because I think a lot of people hear white privilege, they feel like as if you're saying that you're part of the racism that we talk about. And it's like, no. And it's not that clear cut, like, oh, racist. There's a lot of bigotry that happens with everyone. I'm totally capable and unsadly have my moments of like, racial bias or bigot or other bigot acts. It happens, and I try to compensate for that by listening and learning. And when I'm called out and corrected, I try to take it as a personal attack. I try to tell it as someone who's willing to speak to me because they believe that I'm willing to listen. And I try to take that as a sign of respect. Like, hey man, like, that wasn't cool. I'm like, oh shit, I'm sorry, which is a big problem for some people. Like, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't know, which is fair. I know now. How can I be better about it? And it's done. It's done.
And I absolutely agree with that. I think there's definitely this. I think right now with everything going on, there's a lot of rage and anger, and there's definitely an area where we could all just do a little bit with listening to each other and just trying to learn what the other person has experienced and relate it to your own experience. And I think this is going to kind of bring it full circle, as it were, is that we've all got our own stories to tell at the end of the day.
Yep.
And I think that's part of what makes filmmaking and storytelling as an industry in general is so powerful, is that everybody needs to hear each other's stories. And that's why films like even fun superhero movies like Black Panther are important for people like me to see, just because it helps people to understand. Movies like Creed and Fruitvale Station have really sort of like were absolutely game changing for me. So I'm just going to give a lot of credit to the exact same director and acting team here right now. Right.
But I mean, you see what they do. It's like, because you have a filmmaker and like actors sharing their stories and experiences, and you're like, oh wow, and it's powerful, it's moving.
I always want to try and put myself out there and at least learn a little bit more, even if there are things out there that may not be my cup of tea that I like. For example, Spike Lee's movies. I think they're great movies, but they're not necessarily my cup of tea. But he deals with a lot of issues in them and he does an absolutely incredible job with them. But I think that's what storytelling is really all about. It is what you do on a daily basis, teaching, in many ways. I think personally, if a story doesn't have something to learn from it, it's not a real story. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, exactly. I mean, look at the Bible, the best-selling book of all time. You know, it's like they're called parables because they're stories that taught you a lesson. And that same book, same collection of stories has been around for ages, for hundreds of years. And those stories are so powerful, people were moved to the point where they dedicate part of their lives to that, and it's that's totally fine, but that's the power of a story. Is a story can invoke feelings, can make you sympathetic. You have the Good Samaritan. That's why Good Samaritan is a phrase, is that how you could be that one to help another out. How will you be remembered? And so that's why we do it. That's why you tell stories. That's why I tell stories, because everyone's got a story to tell, and that's our way of passing on our experiences, our pain, our contributions, our successes. That's how we really connect. That's why people always ask, what's your favorite movie?
Yeah, that's the way that people always seem to connect. Is what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite song? What's your favorite book? And they all kind of come together in this way that is basically, let's learn from each other's stories. And I think now more than ever, it is a time for listening. It's a time for listening to the stories of people who are struggling. And I think that's part of the reason. I think I've just figured out why I decided to do this little mini of interviews and interview shows, basically.
I know.
I just felt like I needed to do something. I think that's really what it is. I feel like other people's stories need to be told, and it was a terrible finale in my opinion, the Game of Thrones finale. So I'm going to go, but there is a line in it that I really love, and I'm just going to quickly find it on my phone so I can read it out. But it was said by Tyrion at the end, which was, "There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. Nothing can stop it. No enemy can defeat it." And I think the full speech is that Tyrion Lannister goes into this whole story about stories, basically saying that what unites people, it's not money, it's not armies, it's not land, it's stories. There's nothing more. But that's it. There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. And I'm trying not to sound too self-aggrandizing as a writer and filmmaker myself, who loves telling stories, but I feel like now between coronavirus and everything that's happening in the Black Lives Matter movement, it's really important that people listen to everybody from everybody's learned experience, from your own, going all the way up to President Obama, basically, at the end of the day, who I guarantee has dealt with his own issues.
Oh, for sure.
Where would you like to maybe see some improvements? What could happen, do you think, in the next 10 years that could improve the way we represent people of color in media?
I think it'd be, as far as media go, I think getting people of color behind the camera. Because, the camera doesn't point itself. It's the people behind the camera that point the camera. I think it's from a writing level, from a producer level, from just any level, any and all levels needs people of color, but also needs people of different genders, I'm a black man, but a black woman knows more than I do. An Asian woman knows things I don't know. So I think different genders, different colors, different backgrounds. The more colorful your team behind the camera, the better the painting that you see. It's if you do a color in black and white, you can make some great colors in black and white. You make not great colors, some great artwork in black and white. But colors, it's the reason why we look at a rainbow and we're awestruck by it, because it has colors. It's a handful of colors, and so it's why would you want to limit yourself? There's no need to. So I think getting people behind the camera is a huge step, because they become the story makers, and then we get more interesting stories that we haven't heard. It's not the same 5 people making stories; it's a whole coalition of people making stories, and I think that's a huge and honestly easy first step. So now people are well, how do we do that? It's you just look, they're there. We see them on Vine, TikTok, Instagram, people are constantly creating content. So it's not like we don't, the know-how or the want isn't there. They're out there. We just have to be willing to listen and accept them, and then teach them, share in our knowledge with them.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a reason why when I was referencing like the like black creatives that have influenced my work, it all went straight to Ryan Coogler, basically. Because I mean, not just because he's incredible, but I think because there isn't a lot of opportunity given to necessarily black people behind the camera. There was a brief period where Will Smith was the highest paid actor in Hollywood, but that was kind of an anomaly for the most part.
Yeah, that's why you know about it. You're like, what?
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember, except for Robert Downey Jr. now, I can't remember any other actors, really. I think Keanu Reeves once it during the Matrix era, basically. Yeah.
Keanu Reeves, you probably can go back, you say like not Tom Hanks, probably like, Tom
Cruise,
Tom Cruise. And it's like, you can go through and just kind of guesstimate and probably be right about like highest paid, actors. And the list of people of color are very, they stick out. It's like you say, Will Smith.
It's taken me this long to remember Ava I'm probably going to butcher her name, but because I don't think I've ever heard it pronounced out loud, which is Ava DuVernay.
Yeah, it's one of those two. Ava D.
Ava D. Yeah. And she from like Stitch in Time, and she's now doing the Eternals movie. No, it's not Eternals. She's doing Justice League Dark or something, isn't it? I can't remember which one she's directing. She's directing something for Marvel or DC, and I can't remember which one right now off the top of my head. But that's hopefully getting some more black creators behind the camera, and I think that's something that we need really. And I feel like so you were saying like with TikTok and things like that, and like the sort of the genesis of like online video content creating, still like the king of it all really is YouTube at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You yourself, your first ever show you helped create was on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way things work. Is that people you can't really hide a face on YouTube. You can't really hide a color when you're creating it. You're always going to be. There can't be this system the way Hollywood has. Kind of blocked black creators for so long, intentionally and unintentionally. People like yourself who coming up through things like YouTube and all of those independent platforms. You went from the guy doing special effects at RocketJump to being a showrunner at RocketJump to making Anime Crimes Division, and I think that's a way that you can't be intentionally or unintentionally held back. Now, there's definitely still difficulty to climb up that ladder. I know personally there's a lot of difficulty climbing up that ladder, even on YouTube. I mean, there are plenty of black creators out there who don't get the kind of opportunities that you've had to work with Freddie and the RocketJump team.
Yeah,
who don't get the kind of like advantages that I've had to raise $32,000 and make a series or direct something like Sisters of House Black. But I feel like that we're starting to see a movement where people from our generation that created things on YouTube will start to move into the creative world. Would you agree that that's going to be hopefully be the first steps towards making things a bit more equitable?
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the big things with YouTube. Despite like its many shortcomings, is the fact that like it's accessible for people and it's a platform where they can reach millions. And so I definitely think, because Hollywood tried it before, and like Hollywood just needs to get it right. But I definitely think that we will see a lot more. I know we'll see a lot more talent come from YouTube and these platforms where people have already had the experience, they already have the following, and then they'll get the opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I think the first, not white guy late night host came off of YouTube, Lily Singh.
Really? Oh.
Now that I think about it, I can't. Can you think of any major sort of like late night hosts that were non-white men?
Trevor Noah, but
Trevor Noah, yeah, but how did I forget Trevor Noah? He's like one of the best.
Yeah, but like because he's already on the show, that's why.
Yeah. But like, yeah, I mean, we're only just now getting Trevor Noah and Lily Singh at the end of the day, and Lily Singh came up through YouTube at the end of the day, and she was a person of color who got who's got this incredible job now, and I don't know if that would have happened in an age before YouTube, before the sort of like divestment of talent, as it were.
Yeah. Probably not, honestly. But I mean, we have the platforms now. We have the ability to, and I think definitely as long as we utilize it properly, we can get a lot of great talent out there. And even if they can't get out there through the Hollywood traditions, the world's changing so much. There's so many other avenues they can still express themselves. Like, it is viable for some people to have a career and a lifestyle made off of YouTube. It's definitely possible. Hard, rare, but possible.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm more referring to the fact that we're seeing people coming from a YouTube background who are slowly making their way into the industry.
Oh, yeah.
And getting higher in the industry. And I think part of it is also that people who start at our level are now slowly taking over the higher positions in the industry.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that a YouTuber directed a major DC movie, basically. A short film, and YouTuber directed a major DC movie with Shazam.
Yeah, and that's true. And that's definitely true. And the more people that do that, it's like, the philosophy, you climb up and you throw a ladder down. And it's like they're looking through there because it's a battleground. If you can thrive in there and show that you have the skills, they'll get it's possible for you to get the opportunity. And then like you have successes like Shazam, like success. Great. The Hollywood becomes more likely to do it again because they're like, okay, it worked for us the first time. Can it make it work again? And so it all comes out like, people taking the opportunity, capitalizing on it, and then not supporting those causes, because we don't show up for it, we kind of kill it because Hollywood will always follow the money,
Exactly. Yeah.
So our job as viewers is to go out there and literally support it, whether it's like, which is buying a ticket. Like, you want to watch the movie?
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Exactly. Yeah. People are like, oh, wait till it comes on Netflix. Like, no, go out there, pay the money for it. Like, otherwise, Hollywood, all they see is didn't prosper. It didn't make this much money. It failed.
One thing that I wanted to touch on with you now is right now you do a lot of streaming on RocketJump's Twitch platform, which I've tuned into a couple of times. As much as I can, I enjoy Twitch, but I often find myself watching it in the background when I'm doing something else, and then somehow if I'm editing, it's just I can't do it anything because you need that kind of concentration for edit it. But I feel like that's an area where like people are almost coming up in the arena of being creatives, basically, because it does take a lot more than people realize to be like someone on Twitch, whether it's through just gaming or something like that. You've got to be a personality there. So much, yeah. I struggled on Twitch. Like, I did all right at the beginning, but then just it can be intense. It's so much better when you've got somebody to talk to as well. And like when you don't have that many people in the chat, it can be really difficult because you're just you're talking to an empty thing.
Personality for sure makes or breaks it. You have to have the ability to be able to like fail. Like you have to be okay with running a stream with only 2 people in there. Sometimes that happens. So it's like, all right, make sure. That's why I always come from a point of like playing or doing things that I enjoy. Because if I don't enjoy it, how can I expect them to enjoy it? So I do things that I enjoy, that I find entertaining, and then you just hope that it rubs off on another. Because like joy is infectious. If I'm having a good day and I bring that same energy to you, I make your day a little bit better. If I'm sitting here in a bad mood, as we all know, are infectious. So you want to come in with like, good energy, something you carry passionate about, and the personality will back it up. And then like you have all you need. It takes time. It's not overnight. You might never get popular like to the level you want to get. But like if you're doing it because you enjoy it, you will always find success.
Absolutely. I 100% agree on that. As long as there are plenty of creatives out there I know who have like turned around and said that it felt like it just becoming a job, and that's why they stopped doing it. And no matter how big a fan base they had, I've seen people from several million to a few thousand stop not because the numbers weren't there, just because it became exhausting, became a job, and was something they weren't enjoying doing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that leads me into basically what's my final question is, what are you planning to do in the future? What's I know everything's a bit gone to shit right now, but what can we expect to see from you in the future? What have you got like cooking up, and where can we find you now? live from home.
Yeah, live from home. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/RocketJump. I'm trying to do streams there. Of course, it's been tough because Corona happened, and now it's like the racial tensions going on. Like after this call ends, I'm going out to a protest. Right now, I'm getting like messages like, "Oh, what time are you going?" It's like it's always like something. So I'm trying to be out there and like do things that help out the community and like trying to be worldly. But Twitch, I'm very active on the social medias, which is at D2, and I'll put it up there right now. But as far as plans go, like I've always been drawn more to television than I have movies. I mean, I love both, but when it comes to creating something, I want to create something serialized. That's why most of my projects have tend to skew toward that. So definitely I want to get into like, an ongoing series, and I have ideas for that. I have to sit down and do it. And then I do want to do a movie also because I think there's something beautiful about like telling a whole story beginning to end in the span of like 90 minutes or so. And so it comes down to sitting down, figure out the right idea. And there's a couple I have here. But now I think I'm going to go back and take a look at them under the guise of where the world is now. Because when I started making a lot of those ideas, it's same world, but it feels different now. The world feels much different with everyone having been inside. So the yearning for people to go outside. There's a cry for people to connect. And I want to make stories that kind of, appeal to those basic human emotions and the wants. And so
everybody's got a story to tell,
Exactly. So I want stories that like, again, more people that connect to it, the better I feel the job I've done. So we'll see. There's some ideas brewing.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing more from you, and I can't wait to tune into you next time on Twitch. And please stay safe at the protest. I saw you. I see you got picked up by a news channel relatively recently.
That was random.
Yeah. Well, keeping the mask on, so that's good. Staying safe. And I look forward to everybody checking you out, and they will check you out. They will look you up, or else. Anyway, enough for threatening my audience. But thanks for coming in today and chatting with me from not just a social distance, but a 5,000-mile distance.
I mean, thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out. Like, I mean, it's little stuff like this. It's like, we're being heard, and it's it's always fun to talk to you and like have a discussion with other people about like their experiences and what they're going through.
Thanks.
And thanks everybody at home for watching.
Yeah, if you've made it all the way to the end, I'm very happy. Thank you for watching, and don't forget you can follow Darnell at D2. So that'll be popping up on the screen round about here right about now, or it probably popped up earlier as well. But don't forget to like and subscribe and comment on this video as well, just to get the word spread out there and share it with your friends. I think something like 58% of people who actually watch my videos aren't subscribed yet. So if that's the case and you are one of the people who aren't subscribed, consider subscribing because it will help the
just one click.
Yeah. And
like that.
And don't forget to smash that notification bell as well. Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube's got crazy algorithms.
Yeah. All right. Thanks very much, guys. And don't forget, stay safe and get out there and create new worlds.